Hey y'all. Welcome to week 3 as we enter into phase 2 of project 1. There's a lot of numbers there. We're in week 3. We're in phase 2. We're going to go into wireframing of project number 1, a local redesign. So I'm excited about this week. This is the week where we'll wrap up mood boards. We'll move into wireframing really quick, and then we'll get our way into our first interactive prototype. So I just thought I'd do a quick overview of what to expect for this week, the different modules that are available to y'all in week 3. In this video, they're going to be hidden, but if you're watching this, they're available, and welcome to the content for week 3. And so each day, both Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to have 2 modules for each day. Module number 1 on Tuesday will focus around you submitting your final mood board. So y'all are doing a great job already, and you've already had a chance to get some peer feedback, and I've provided some feedback to y'all as well. Now we move into finalizing those mood boards and just submitting them for final review. In that module, I've got a little bit of an overview around how you can take those mood boards in the size that you have them and begin maybe to prepare them for how you can put them in your final project 1 presentation. And so a couple helpful tips there in that that module, but it will primarily be around you submitting your final mood boards for project number 1. The second module for this Tuesday is the one where you're watching this video now. So in this module, it centers around your wireframe concepts and some great content to help you get started there. Won't spend too much time. I'm going to actually dive in there in a second. On Thursday, 2 other additional modules will be due. So 2 on Tuesday, 2 on Thursday. So if you're watching this on Tuesday and you haven't finalized your mood boards or went back to that first module, please do that before you move on. But just as an overview for both Thursday's modules, this first one on Thursday will be around your space to submit your final milestone for your wireframe. So milestone 2. Your wireframe. So that'll give you a chance to get some feedback on your wireframes, and then maybe refine anything as you need to before you submit them for as your final milestone for project number 1. And then also on Thursday, I know some of you guys are getting ahead and you're doing a great job maybe of getting some of your work done early. So I want to try to include, as we go through this course, maybe just one module that's a helpful kind of, if you've got time and you want to get started, here's what we'll be talking about next. And so on Thursday, the second module centers around an intro to prototyping. It's informative, it's not graded, but if you're kind of ahead of the game a little bit and want to get started into prototyping, that'll be a great spot for you to dive into to learn a little bit more as we move into our 4th week and our 3rd milestone as we move into our prototypes there. So I'm going to jump into the module that this video is housed in, and maybe just give a rundown of what to expect within this module. And so I've included, this video will drop here in bucket number 1. Bucket number 2 is a great overview of how to create your first wireframe. So some tips and tricks in there from a platform called Career Foundry. They've got a lot of great content, and we'll reference that as we move throughout the course. But how to create your first wireframe is a great introduction. Some of the principles that I'll be laying out here in another video below this will come from this Career Foundry video. It's kind of, they do a lot with best practices in the UI UX industry, and so I'm excited for y'all to watch that as kind of an introduction into creating your first wireframe. Another video is here by Nielsen Norman Group, and so NNG is a great resource for you to have in your back pocket as it relates to UI design, UX for sure, and then UX research. And so in this video, she does a great job of going over the difference between prototypes and wireframes. And so while you'll experience that over the next few weeks as we move from wireframing to prototyping, it's just a great introductory video if you're kind of asking yourself, well, why are we wireframing? What's the difference between wireframing and prototyping? And that video does a great job of going over that as well. Some helpful articles about wireframing for you to read, and then also sharing some great examples of wireframes. And so why I love wireframing is if you've already taken intro to graphic design or intro to typography, you probably understand that sketching and thumbnails are a huge part of your process as a graphic designer. And so wireframing in the UI UX space is no different. It's your time to get kind of your thoughts out of your head and onto your paper. And in some ways, visually, we've done that with the mood board, But now we start to do that with how is this going to lay out on my website, on the screen that I'm designing on. And so wireframing are essentially the thumbnail sketch of the UI UX process. Maybe the difference in that and why I love wireframing is you can use that space to get your ideas out quickly, but then they're almost always accompanied by annotations. And so in this screen, this image here, you see this designer has laid out what looks to be kind of a store wireframe. And so you've got some product names, you've got a completed list, it looks like here, maybe a chance to upsell here at the very bottom. But what they've done in this red text along the edges is annotate them. And so while the wireframe looks very rough and very unrefined, this additional text helps somebody, helps your client, helps maybe a non-designer think, okay, I see how they're going to lay this page out. Now, what kind of content can I expect to show there? And as you maybe go into your career as a UI UX designer, wireframes are great as you maybe partner with a developer. And so a lot of times it's great for the designer will oftentimes be ahead of the process before it gets to a development team. But even in this wireframe stage, if you've got a great skeleton layout, if you've got some great annotations, oftentimes a development team can get started ahead of time. And that just makes your product come to market that much faster because you've taken maybe the extra 30 minutes to annotate your wireframes. And so your submission in this post will require you to have annotation. And it's just the best practice as you think about a UI UX career to have wireframes with annotation. If you just did a quick Google search for wireframing example, this is probably going to be one of the top ones that comes up. I've seen this Coastal Capital wireframe for years now. It come up as a best example of wireframing, and I can see why. Here it's very rough and refined. They don't even have the tagline here. They just kind of have this squiggly line for text. There's no real indication of what this text is going to be, but on its surface, I can see where the navigation is going to be. I can tell they're going to have to figure out how to design this kind of header space. But they've got some great annotations along the edges to give me an idea of what to expect. And so here's where, I think it's helpful from a development perspective. So if you can see my pointer here, kind of right in the middle, you can see they just have what looks like some squiggly text, a couple lines and a few buttons. But off to the side, they have RSS feeds for blog. And so if I'm a developer, if I'm a business partner, I can tell off the bat, okay, I'm going to have to figure out a way to connect that into this design, the RSS feed and the blog. And so, like I said, off the bat, these annotations help streamline the process downstream. So it's both for you explaining it to the client, but then in the event that you're working with a development team, oftentimes you will be, they'll have an understanding of where your intentions are and what to expect to need to populate and to build for that space. And so, again, annotations are just the best practice there. This final example, or sorry, second to last example, is kind of where I usually take my annotations, the direction that I usually take it. I love including these numbers. It just helps me as I'm in maybe a meeting with a client sequentially talk through these numbers. It gives me a quick reference point as well. It's not that one is better than the other, the arrows versus the annotation or versus the numbers. It's just a preferred practice that I like to take. That I've seen work well. And so in this example, you see, the sticker for number one hidden by my my Pinterest pin there action. But number one up there in the top left corner for logo and tagline. Number two, navigation on the right hand side. Number three, I can see is the latest article for preview. And so while the designer doesn't go into much detail about from an interface perspective, what's this going to look like? I know that this big box is going to tell me this is where the latest article for review or preview is going to live. Number four might be the latest article calendar info. So maybe when was it posted? Number five would be ads that are running down the page. And so while this UI, this wireframe is very rough, it's not very refined, those annotations help me understand what to expect there. And so annotations should always accompany the wireframe. If I haven't said that enough, I think that's probably the fourth time I've said it. This last example here that I've got, I think as we move into, in this module, in this milestone for this project number one, we're only really dealing with a subset of pages. We're dealing with, a home page, an interior page, and maybe a contact page. And so those are pretty high level when it comes to UI, UX design and the interaction design of it. And in this example of this wireframe, you're getting a little bit more detailed. And so the designer here is actually showing what it would look like to click on this overflow menu, this 3-dot vertical menu. And if that's an unfamiliar term, we're going to dive into UI terminology in the next couple of weeks and maybe layer that into some of the other things you'll be doing throughout the course, just to help you understand, what does it mean when we say a menu button, or an overflow menu, or a radial button, or a checkbox, or things like that. Just some terminology that might be helpful as well. But in this example, the designer has shown you what to expect when this overflow menu is triggered. It's going to show edit, delete, assign, and then from there, he even goes to the extent of showing what the edit state is going to look like, or what the assign state is going to look like. And so she's done a great job of showing what to expect when you navigate through a product. And again, why that's so important is that a development team or a team that might be building this with code with HTML and CSS and more doesn't have to wait on you to finish your final UI design, your final prototype. They can get started even quicker. And so that's why I love wireframes, why I love annotating and providing just that little extra time it takes to annotate what you're thinking on the page. And so I'm going to actually demo as I get started with my wireframes here in bucket number 6. And then I'll also include a video that goes over the instructions and requirements for this wireframing phase of the project. So I hope this has served you well as a kind of an overview of this module and of this week in interactive design. You guys have done a great job on your mood boards already, and so I'm excited to see as you take the next step to creating that interactive prototype as we move into wireframe. So I'll talk to y'all later in a couple other videos, and I'll chat with you then. Have a good one.